All righty. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining, everybody. Appreciate you coming out on a Sunday night and watching the film and then join us for this important discussion. We're very excited to, I'm very excited to be having a screening in Arizona, even though I'm sitting here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But Arizona is my second home. I went to Arizona State University and then lived back there for about 12 years. I moved home here to Louisiana about 6 years ago. So it's good to be back, even if it's just virtually. But I want to thank Miss Katie McPherson and Miss Teresa for organizing this great event for us for Compass Christian Church of Chandler and Bark Family Program for making all this happen. My name is Greg again, and I directed and produced the film. I'm also a person in recovery for mental health and substance use issues. I spent many years in and out of mental hospitals, drug rehab, in jail, and halfway houses. And thankfully, I found recovery actually in Arizona. And that's where I got sober and really started taking care of my mental health issues, and which really, started me on this journey of recovery. Film was a big goal and dream of mine. I lived in Los Angeles after college, and unfortunately, my mental health and substance use issues got in the way of that. But by the grace of God and great support system and being willing to put in the work, this is now the second film that I've done on the topic of suicide. So it's pretty cool when someone who has been suicidal themselves, like me, has the opportunity to share messages and share films to hopefully help people find hope and realize that there is a better way. And so that's one of the things that we are talking about this evening. And we have an awesome two panelists. In addition to myself, and I'll start with Miss Katie McPherson, who I mentioned was one of the ones who made all this happen, but she's a longtime school teacher, and I just found out a mother of 4 daughters. So that's and 2 of which are twins, so that's like a gold medal worthy right there in itself. But I know you're very passionate about this topic, and I know you're very passionate about helping young people and families. So we're very excited to have you here. And would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit why you're so passionate about this topic?
Sure. Thanks for being here. I live here in Chandler, Arizona. Started as a teacher, guidance counselor, school administrator. And in the summer of 2017, really started to see a contagion here in the Southeast Valley of Phoenix. And a contagion is multiple students dying by suicide within a very short amount of time. And so unfortunately, we've been in sort of that contagion type scenario for quite a while now. We've made a ton of progress, laws passed, many passionate parents coming forward sharing their stories. But just as a career educator, I spent 21 years on a middle school or high school campus. So teenagers and tweens are my people. I find them so awesome and sometimes wildly misunderstood. So I just love kids, and I have my own, and I just think mental health is so important. And I'm just so honored to be here tonight, and so thankful that I found Emma and Greg. And I'm so thankful for the people that put this on at Compass Christian Church, and Teresa Burt and Lindsay, who came together with Breakthrough. And so there's more goodness to come. Today is really just a kickoff of more events like this. And again, thanks so much for having me here tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, and your love for tweens and teenagers reminded me that for my day job for the last 15 years, I've worked in youth mental health. I started a youth program called My Life in Arizona, that then I expanded it other places around the country for the company I work for, Magellan Health. So definitely a population that I'm very passionate about. So so glad you're doing all the work that you are. Our next guest, you may have recognized from the film, Miss Emma Benoit.
Hi everyone. I'm just going to echo what they just said. I'm so thankful that you all chose to spend your Sunday evening to watch the film and to join this discussion. I became passionate about mental health, obviously, after surviving my own suicide attempt. And I really didn't know what this journey would encompass, but it has truly been one of the most humbling journeys to have been able to be a part of, in sharing my story and really trying to break the stigma and provide hope to people who maybe were in my same position and just struggling with their mental health. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and hopefully I can provide you with some answers to your questions and give you more hope.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma. Speaking of questions, Katie has a fancy platform that we're using to take questions. Would you mind explaining that to folks?
Yeah, for those of you that are online, you can just drop your question in the chat. But for those of you at the church that are in person, I believe you were shared a link called sli.do, SLI.do.com. It's sort of an amazing platform where you can just ask anonymous questions. So I see a bunch of them rolling in. Our event number is 731-942. 731-942. So if you go to your web browser, either on your phone or your laptop, and go to sli.do.com and put in event number 731-942, you'll see a bunch of questions there you can ask with your name or anonymously. We've got a bunch of great questions to be answered and resources to give.
Awesome. Well, you were sharing one of the early ones with me, and I maybe think it's a good place to start, considering we got a lot of people watching in the church. And I believe it was something to do with faith. Would you want to share that question?
Yeah, sure. Let me scroll down to it. There's so many good ones. Let's see here. What Bible verses would help me get through my struggles? How can I be closer to God through my struggles?
Wow.
Well, that's a good question. I'll kind of start off on my answer. There's several verses in scripture that help me. The book of Proverbs is very, very useful in my mental health, in my mental wellness toolkit, if you will. So I definitely would recommend going to the book of Proverbs. Also, Psalms has a lot of great scripture in there that's really grounding and reassuring, if you will. But what was the second part of the question was, how do you, I forgot what was this?
How can I be closer to God through my struggles?
That's a really good question. And I like it because I feel like in my own journey with my faith, I feel like some of the times when I feel closest to God is when I'm actually in the trenches in the valley. I feel like that's where I can connect most deeply with God, is whenever I am most vulnerable and just surrendering all of my struggles and my problems to Him. So I would definitely encourage you, if you're going through a hard time or struggling with your mental health, or really just going through anything in life, to turn to God, because He will cover you in peace and He will shield you from whatever it is that you're suffering with. And I feel in my own personal experience, like I said, I felt the most close to the Lord whenever I leaned to Him, whenever I was in a valley or in the trenches. So
awesome. Thank you. Maybe we'll talk a little bit too. My favorite Bible verse is, Matthew 23. I really like Matthew 23 a lot. And there's a line in there, those who exalt themselves will be humbled. Those who humble themselves will be exalted. So I think particularly in this day and time, just we really can lose a lot of humility and just recognize how important it is to be humble no matter what our, successes are. But I wanted to just add a little bit to the whole topic of, of faith and really how important. I mean, obviously having faith and a strong belief is very important for a lot of people. Some might not, choose to believe, but one of the things we've talked about a lot in rolling out this film is just the importance, kind of goes to the faith without works is dead. So a lot of times, we can, as faithful people, think that, God's just going to take away, kind of everything and make things perfect, when in reality, it takes some work, so it's using those resources and things that God gives us, whether those people we are put in our lives. For me as a person with behavioral health issues, I take medication, which I believe is, from God through man. So I think it's just really important to recognize that, unfortunately, mental health issues aren't just something we can pray away. It takes some work on a lot of different levels. And we had a priest on one of our panels before, and he really, drilled that home. He had lost a best friend who was also a priest to suicide. And, the priest really struggled with that, of feeling like, God was against him or something, or why wouldn't God just take this away? But, it's really just important to know that you just might have to do a little extra work, but that doesn't mean God's not still with you. Did you want to touch on that, Katie, or did you want to bring another question to the?
I'm going to ask another question only because there's so many good ones. I want to make sure we get at least a few answered tonight. And this one is for Emma. What thing do you keep in your mind that keeps you going when life feels heavy and it's hard to keep going?
That's a really good question. Well, I would just say that I have my anchors now. And kind of what I refer to as my anchors are the things that whenever I am in a moment of despair or having a mental health crisis or just a really hard time, those anchors really bring me back down to my reality, and keep me grounded. And my anchors are the people in my life who I love dearly. So reasons essentially why, if my mind was telling me things, if my mind was giving me suicidal thoughts, or if I was feeling depressed, those would be my anchors, would be the reasons why I would not listen to those thoughts, why I would turn away from those thoughts and fight them. So would be the people I love in my life, people that I could not see myself not being with. And then also my future. That's something that, looking back, I really was very fearful of, was the future and what was to come for me. But I've since transformed that whole concept and now look at it in a totally different light. And I am hopeful for my future, and I'm excited for my future, and I'm eager to see what there is down the line for me in life. So whenever I'm feeling super low or having, hard times, my anchors, the people I love, and my future really do keep me grounded and remind me why I'm going to keep fighting and fight through the yuckiness that comes sometimes with our mental health.
Awesome. Hey, if you could please mute yourself as you're coming in, we'll try to help folks out with that, but we'd appreciate it. We got a question in the chat here, which I think is a good one. We have lots of great questions. And I'm going to pull the second part of this one, but do you have any comments to sibling survivors who may be struggling themselves and may fear turning to their parents due to the feelings that may be burdening them?
So is that like a question basically saying, like, one sibling had mental health challenges and this individual is having them as well, and they're afraid?
I think what they're talking about is like a sibling. So, what the sibling might go through if their brother or sister attempts suicide or dies by suicide, and the siblings kind of, concerned, doesn't go to their parents, maybe because they don't want to burden them. Or I figured maybe you could talk a little bit about your brother and y'all's kind of relationship with all this, if you're.
Sure. I can talk about that a little bit. So my brother and I obviously grown up very close. We are still very close. But when I attempted suicide, he didn't really understand it. He, similar to my dad, was kind of under the mentality of suicide is kind of like a coward's way out. And nothing is really that big of a deal. Nothing is that bad to want to end your life. And so him and my dad were kind of in that frame of thinking. And then obviously, since my attempt happened, that has since changed. And I think the biggest thing that I can remember looking back on that journey was the patience that I had to learn to have with my loved ones and my family members. And I really didn't understand how or why they could perceive my situation in that way. But just taking time to give them the space to explain why they felt that way, and then explain my reasoning for what I did. Really just, it was a journey, not gonna lie. It took some time for them to come around and fully be an understanding and allow me to just give me that grace, essentially. But over time, they definitely came around, and they understood more about mental health, and they both equally now understand and support me in this journey and support mental health as a whole. And they just view it so much differently than they did prior to my attempt. And so I think the biggest thing that I can give you in this question is just to have patience and just bear in mind that everyone views things differently and everyone feels differently about certain things. But just having patience for your loved ones to come around and understand what you may have experienced or what you might be experiencing currently is very important. And then too, just having open, authentic dialogue is very important. I encourage for everything to be on the table, especially when talking about mental health.
Awesome. Thank you.
What types of ways would you, because one of the questions is, I feel like I have to be perfect all the time and my parents don't really understand the mental health thing. And especially like here in Arizona, we end school in about 3.5 weeks. So there's college decisions are being, posted all over the place, prom, grades, SAT, ACT, like so much pressure to perform. Seniors that are graduating, maybe the finality of that is supposed to be all like, yay, but you're like freaking out, like you said, about your future. So what are some other ways, if I don't feel as a kid that I can approach my mom and dad in person? Are there other ways that you tried to tell your parents or could give the kids, like texting or journaling or like a letter? Are those types of communication things that you think would work, or have you seen them work with other students?
Yeah, totally. So I know for myself, I totally can understand and relate to that pressure that they might be feeling right now, because I felt that exact same pressure as well. And I know the timing of my suicide attempt is kind of, that was the summer before my senior year. So that pressure really was very heavy on me at that time. So I totally understand where they're coming from. And same here, like I was very afraid to approach my parents with what I was feeling and experiencing, because I was afraid that they would either panic, freak out, make me feel guilty about it, or just not know what to do or where to turn to. So I kind of just kept it to myself, obviously. But that is not what I want to encourage people to do. I want to encourage people to reach out and reach out to people that are in their circle to support them. But if unfortunately your parents don't understand or aren't giving you the type of support that you're needing, I definitely encourage you, reach out again. There are so many people out there who understand mental health, who will be the right person for you. You've just got to continue to reach out and advocate for yourself. And I know it's really challenging and it's not easy and it's not comfortable to talk about these things, but talking about them will only help you work through them, and continue to advocate for yourself. And also, again, with your family, be patient, but I encourage open, authentic dialogue and let them know that this is more than just a bad mood. This is more than just a bad day. It's more than just a bad week. I feel like I need extra help. That's why I'm telling you, so that we together, family unit, can find me the support and help that I need. You know what I mean? So if it takes, you advocating in that way for yourself to get yourself the help that you need, I say go for it. And I encourage it, because ultimately, what you need, the support that you're looking for. So I definitely encourage you to bring people into your support group. That way you can really get the help that you need.
Awesome. I did want to, somebody commented in the chat that they missed the movie screening. It actually will be available to stream tonight until midnight Eastern. So that's I think 9:00 Arizona time or 10:00 Central time. So you would have time after this to watch it if you want.
Awesome. Do you have another question in the chat, or you want me to go?
Yeah, I mean, there was another one in the chat that was about signs. Like, were there signs or that you maybe gave, or that, in hindsight, that people might have been able to pick up on if they were watching for them?
Yeah, so looking back, there were definitely some signs that were left. I would say the biggest sign that was left was that I didn't try out for cheerleading my senior year. Cheerleading was obviously always something that I was very passionate about. And it was this sport that I put so much of my time and energy into pretty much my entire life. So to give that up, and without really a reason, was certainly a sign. Because when I reflect back and think about my decision-making process, when it came to not trying out, my reasons were because I didn't feel good enough to be on the squad. I didn't feel like my team needed me anymore. I felt like there were girls out there who were better than me and were more deserving of the spot. I felt like all those things, all the reasons that I really had for not wanting to cheer again were all things that were relating to my mental health and the deterioration of my mental health. So that was one of the bigger signs, but then some smaller signs that, you know, are more challenging to pick up, I would think, because they kind of mimic typical teenage behavior, if you will. And so I would say I would say probably when I turned like 15, my demeanor and my character really changed. I went from being super charismatic, super bubbly, everything rolled off my shoulders, nothing really affected me that much, to everything bothering me, everything weighing heavier on me, being super over emotional, always in my head. I developed extreme social anxiety, and that manifested in ways that, you know, changed my behaviors. And I got into behaviors that I typically wouldn't have interest in. So really mainly just the character shift would have been a sign. But like I said, hindsight is obviously 2020, and never, those were some of the biggest signs that were being presented. But they also mimic typical teenage behavior. It can be really challenging to kind of differentiate what is actually me struggling and what is typical behavior.
So thank you. On that note, before we read another question, I got a question for you, Katie, along those lines. As a mother of 4 teenage girls, I mean, how do you navigate that and encourage parents to navigate? Like, I mean, what's a moody teenager versus a teenager that might need help?
Yes, I've been blessed with training from some really great professionals, just from, you know, being a part of the education community, that rides in the car that are shoulder to shoulder are like where the gold is. So, you know, if they're super upset, especially with boys, boys being across from you sometimes actually makes cortisol in the brain go up and coat the verbal emotive centers. So bodies in motion open up faster. So walking shoulder to shoulder, throwing a ball, kicking a ball, being in the car, making up an errand, being like, let's go. And then just a simple like prompt, like, so tell me more about what's going on with you and Kaden, or tell me more about what's going on with Chloe, you know, whatever the conflict is, being in motion and not face to face at the kitchen table, like hammering them with questions, that never goes well. I will also point out that like over 60% of the time, teenagers misread faces of moms and dads. So that's an actual study out of Harvard. And so it's just a really sensitive time for a kid to be going through that puberty, like 13 to 18. And so not taking things personally and allowing yourself to step back. I kind of joke around with my mom friends, like just spray Teflon on you, let things kind of roll off you, and, you know, not personalize them as much. It's not easy at all, especially with 4. But I think when you sit in the ditch and really get vulnerable with them and validate, like, I have never been on Snapchat and been blasted, so I don't know what that's like. Imagine that's super painful. The validation is what I hear from my kids and others a lot, is like, I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to listen and validate that this is a painful experience.
And just expand on a little bit about your experience of being a teacher for over 20 years. I mean, what's your kind of advice for handling this as a teacher of students who may not have somebody at home they can talk to, and, you know, you might be the only person?
I mean, we are protective factors. Any trusted adult, a cool aunt, a cool uncle, a cool cousin, a teacher, an administrator, a coach, the janitor, like, we are some of the very most trusted adults in their space. So again, that openness to like, I'm in the middle of class right now, but can you catch me at lunch? I have like 10 minutes. We can talk if we need more. I can see you after school, like just being super open, and then recognizing your own stuff as a teacher. Like, if you're not in a space to receive a student's angst, how can we be the bridge to find them the support that they need? Because we aren't clinicians, and some of our kids are really, really struggling with what I would call acute distress. And so we're not supposed to be, you know, licensed clinical social workers, but what we can be is the bridge, be the bridge.
Awesome. We got a question in the chat. I'm going to just read this one because it's a good kind of statement question, but I think is largely while we're all here. It broke my heart to see the girl in the movie talk about just wanting adults and parents to see young people struggling as more than a dramatic teen. How do we increase awareness about this problem that is an epidemic? Everyone thinks it won't be their child, but then it is, or your child's friend. And so young these days. I talk to parents and get blank stares, and I'm baffled by the lack of awareness. I mean, and that's one of the big reasons why we made this film and are wanting to have a good film, but also to have these conversations like we're doing tonight, and hopefully create awareness and give people the okay to talk about it, and particularly parents. We've had a lot of positive impact by parents seeing this film with their teenagers, because it does kind of give that that window to be able to talk about it, because it is difficult to broach the subject. And like you say, it's kind of sitting around the kitchen table, it could be pretty awkward for the parent and for the young person. So I think by seeing something like this and a lot of the work that y'all do in Arizona related to other organizations or things you do at the church, I mean, all these things help create awareness. But Emma, do you have thoughts on this, or Katie?
I think awareness and education are key in our community. I can only speak for our local community has come miles from where we were 4 or 5 years ago. But as humans, we avoid pain. So this is not a topic that people want to talk about. So if you try to approach someone and they don't want to speak about it, that's okay. I think back to Emma's point of being patient. This is a community responsibility. It can't be on the schools. It can't be on the churches. Can't be just on parents. This is literally all hands on deck. Law enforcement, faith, businesses, fire, police, us, schools. Like, this is the leading cause of death in the state of Arizona, age 10 to 14 and 15 to 24. So I think that speaks volumes about the desperation that our kids have, and that it's time to get brave. And one of the local news reporters asked, like, what do we need to do? And I said, we need to name it to claim it. So if we have this issue, we have to be able to claim it, and being patient with your friends. If they don't want to talk about it, that's okay. We can continue to feed them awareness pieces, and maybe they'll come alongside of us and maybe they won't. But the work that's being done in the schools is fantastic. We have a mandatory law now due to the Warnock family was brave enough to go forward to the governor and say, I want this law passed in my son's name. We don't want another family to go through this. So it's mandatory in the state of Arizona for grades 6 through 12, teachers, staff, bus drivers, et cetera, to be trained in this. So I think awareness and education are key, but the adults in the room have to get brave. A lot of the questions that are rolling in tonight are from the children in the audience at the church saying, I've tried to talk to my parents about this and they're not listening. What are some other avenues I can go about that? And so that, to me, speaks volumes about us getting super brave as adults.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add to that, I think, we see a lot in the news and stuff of people getting, parents getting really kind of angry and irate about, issues and going to school board meetings and things like that. And, can debate whether those issues are important or not, but I guarantee you they're not as important as our kids' lives. And so I think the more parents that stand up and demand the schools do stuff, or do more stuff, or that particular elected officials do more stuff to fund more things, I think parents really have a lot of power, as do young people, like the young people that are standing up asking questions. And I think that's a huge thing, that parents and young people recognize that they have power to really bring about change.
And I think too, suicide is like the end of the runway, right? There, as Emma pointed out, there were lots of different things that she was doing that were sort of drastic changes in behavior, and then little things that all accumulated in that lens of hers was narrowing, like, I have to get out of this pain. And my only solution in my downstairs brain is to do this, right? And so we can catch kids on that runway of struggle if we know what we're looking for. And then the second piece to that I think is so important, that I think is totally controllable, is if you have a firearm in your home, to secure it. Means restriction saves lives. If you have meds in your home, locking them up. The act of or attempt of suicide is typically 2 to 5 minutes. The planning is about 8 to 10 minutes. We have a very short window of time, but that runway is where the education and awareness comes, where we can keep them up on that runway and hopefully mitigate the attempt. So, I can only speak for regionally. Firearms have been an issue for us in the moment of feeling so desperate. If they hadn't had access to that firearm, we may have been able to intervene.
Yeah, that's definitely the case, around the country. That's by far the, most common means. There's another question here, which I think is an important one as well. How can you learn to trust someone that has had suicidal thoughts, but has since gotten mental help and assures you that you're doing well? Because can be a scary thing for a parent or a friend if someone, is saying they're suicidal or attempts or something. Does anybody have any thoughts on that question?
I would just say keep the communication open. I'm not sure the circumstances of your situation particularly, but I would just encourage to keep communication lines open, because that's just about all you can do in this type of situation is just maintain that level of communication, and also continue to reach out if you find that they aren't reaching out to you as often, or they're being shorter with you when they're speaking with you. I just encourage you to continue to reach out, and continue to keep that communication open. That way they know that if they need you, they could go to you. And I personally can't relate to that, because I've personally never had to experience that. But I can imagine that it could be really challenging as a person on the other side of someone's mental health journey to, be trusting, but still be slightly fearful. But I would just say, keep communication open and continue to reach out and let them know that you're there, regardless of what it is that they're going through.
Yeah, I mean, being okay. There's a line in my previous film, Suicide: The Ripple Effect, where Kevin Hines asked his dad, do you still worry about me? And his dad said, every time the phone rings, so it's people are going to experience that fear, and it's okay. I mean, it's their feelings, but like Emma said, it's kind of having that communication open so they can express their feelings, but also, so the person can express their feelings. Do you have another question, Katie?
Yeah, something that Emma said actually when she was in Arizona last time, I think is really important for our community, because it's a commonality that I see around here too, that a lot of the students that are struggling have it all, right? And I remember you saying, like, I didn't think that I had a pretty charmed life. I had two great parents. I live in a nice area. I go to great school. I'm a cheerleader. I'm a model. Like, you have all these things going for you, right? And you mentioned something about, I didn't know, I felt bad that I had this great life and I was feeling this way. And I think some of our students around here feel the same. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So I definitely felt kind of trapped in a way, because I kind of believed in the stigma a little bit. I felt guilty for feeling this way because of my life. I mean, I looked at my life and I said, I have a great family, all these things. Why do I feel this way? And then that feeling turned into guilt and shame. And I carried shame for feeling my feelings. I carried guilt for feeling anything other than happy or joyful or grateful. And I think that whole scenario in my story really was just it was kind of like a plague in my head, because I believed in the stigma. I so believed that there's no reason that I should be feeling this way. Why do I feel this way? And then in turn, I blamed myself. And I felt that I was in the wrong. I felt like I was a bad person for feeling these things. I felt like shame on me for not being so grateful for my great life. And so that whole concept definitely was a factor in the reason why I attempted suicide. And looking back on that, it's so frustrating for me to have to reflect on that, because knowing what I know now, I know to never invalidate my feelings. I will never invalidate my feelings. And I have such a different perspective now. So, but to just have that experience and to know that others out there have such a similar experience. I feel like the best thing that I can share to them is you are not alone. And with that, you are not invalid in what you're feeling. You are not less than because you feel this way, regardless of what the circumstances of your life look like, regardless of anything, any factor. Your feelings are valid and they deserve to be heard, and you deserve to get support to work through them. So that is definitely, that whole story, like I said, was one of the contributors in the reason why I attempted suicide, and B, before that even happened, why I never felt justified enough in my feelings to actually reach out for help, because I would automatically assume what I was going to be given in response. So that piece of my story, that how the stigma kind of affected me in such a way, really is one that I'm very passionate about, because it could have been so prevented.
Nice. There's a question in the chat, or do you got one there?
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. What do you wish, Emma, this question for you, what do you wish your parents had known, or while you were struggling, or was there anything they could have maybe done to?
Yeah, so I think that kind of, honestly, to sit here and say that I wish they would have done things feels a little wrong, not gonna lie, because I'd never blamed anyone for what happened. I never felt like blame was necessary for my story, but there were certainly things that could have looked differently and could have yielded different results, for sure. And I think the biggest thing is just the way that they kind of viewed my problems. And looking back, I can remember times when I would be, venting or just ranting or overwhelmed and expressing that emotion with my parents. And immediately it was like a wall of invalidation just kind of went up, because they couldn't see my problems on the level that I could see them. They were just so stuck and wrapped up in their adult lives that they really couldn't take the time to step back and be like, wow, that sounds like it's really hard for her, or that sounds like it's really heavy and difficult for her, or it sounds like she has a ton of pressure on her. So I think that the biggest thing that could have been difference in terms of what like the outcome was, I think would have been just their perspective on mental health as a whole, and their perspective on my resilience, because I think that they assumed that, oh, Emma's fine, she'll make it through, she's so resilient, she'll bounce back, which, looking back, I am frustrated that that was something that they assumed, but I have to also reflect and remember that I kind of put up this image, and I kind of put on this hard shell, this untouchable, overachieving image. But definitely just, I guess, the way they perceive mental health as a whole. And I think that what could have made the biggest difference is if they kind of approached me and what I was going through in a way that Katie exampled it for us, like the Snapchat thing or the boy thing. I mean, like, those are all real problems that I was having in my life that at the time seemed like life or death, end of the world type problems. Like, really, they were real for me, life or death, end of the world type of problems. But my parents, for whatever reason, just could not understand how real those things were for me. So I think ultimately the biggest thing that could have made a difference is just their perspective and their perception on mental health and the way it affects the youth.
What percentage of that pressure that you felt would you say was maybe amplified or magnified by the use of social media? Because I noticed that you and many other beautiful people have, like, you look at these kids' platforms and literally it looks like they have it all, right? I mean, all of you, all of us do a great job of posting, our great kids' accolades, their 4.0, the national honor. That's our front stage. Nobody's posting their backstage.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's posting bad grades. Nobody's posting their dirty laundry room. Like nobody's posting the fight they got in with their husband. Like we're all just posting our front stage. And so we've created this illusion that our children are also following. So with the advent of social media and your particular use of it, how much would you say that you struggled with the use of social media as it related to keeping up your image?
I would say, to give a percentage, I would probably say like 30 to 40% was definitely adding pressure that was to the pressure that was already there. And for me, excuse me, for me, social media was just a tool for comparison. That's really all it was. And I'm able to reflect back and admit that now. But I think that what really affected me when I was in high school in terms of social media was me always feeling like I never had enough. Because like you said, everyone posts the best of the best, their highlights, right? And so I think what was really the most damaging part of that concept of my story was the fact that I didn't understand that people were just posting the best moments of their life, that this is not their full reality. Because I viewed social media as full reality. I thought it was full transparency. And I fell victim into believing that these false realities were actually people's lives, and that my friends really did get the newest of the new stuff immediately. And that, seeing my friends at parties together, that stuff is really challenging for a youth. And so I feel like the biggest difference now for me when it comes to social media is just the fact that I fully understand that it is a highlight reel, and that they aren't showing, like you said, their dirty laundry or the bad grades or, the fight they got into with their friend. They're not sharing that. So the fact that I'm able to be mindful of that now, it definitely helps when it comes to social media, because now I can just look at social media and just understand that this is just the lens that people are portraying for me to see. So I think with social media, the biggest negative factor, like I said, in my life would have been just the perception and just the false image that I had of life. And I think that with that too, a point that I want to make is just like, my feed was so mentally draining, and so mentally damaging that I didn't even realize it. But now I have realized it. And so I've taken a look at it, and I'm like, this is my social media. This is my phone. I paid for this phone. So I have to see this. So I have to pick what it is, what content I want to consume on a daily basis. So I've since gone through and kind of cleaned out my own socials, but social media is a double-edged sword. Truly it is, because I experienced the negative and harmfulness of social media, but since everything happened, I've gotten to experience the positive, more helpful side of social media. So I think ultimately it's just the perception that is really challenging and damaging for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it goes to that positivity aspect of things, and I think it's kind of that you can flip it as far as like the positive peer support, whether it's on social media or just in person. And I mean, that's one of the big themes of the film, is around the fact that, if we're going to make any real headway in youth mental health and youth suicide prevention, young people have to be actively involved. And I think the more we can like flip the switch, so to speak, and it be cool to, say how you're feeling. It can be cool to reach out, for help, and, it can be cool to have positive content on social media where you can connect with other people that are doing, positive things. So, really always encourage adults, whether it's starting peer groups like the Hope Squad, or starting peer groups at your, at your church or in your community, that really focus on being there for one another, and focus on, talking about how we're feeling and talking about mental health and wellness, and doing, positive things. I think that's, a big way that things are going to, change. So, and that's one thing that really adults can do, is really provide those platforms and opportunities for young people to use their voices. Because extreme healing power in helping other people heal. And so when you have those kind of peer groups where young people have the opportunity to support their friends, it helps the person giving the support and it helps the person getting the support. So I think we're getting close to our time here.
Yeah. I wanted to offer some resources. So a lot of students trade messages online, on text, on social media, on video game platforms. So as part of BARC for Schools, who's sponsoring us tonight, BARC surveils both school issued accounts as well as family accounts. And so, we run in the background of 150 different social media platforms, gaming platforms, G Suite. So if a student, like when Emma was struggling and maybe sharing with a friend of hers, this is how I'm feeling, or this is what I'm planning on doing, those sorts of things would pop up as an alert that would go to the parent's phone, or if it was a school issued account, it would go to the administrator or the counseling department for us to intervene with parents on that topic. So there are some really cool apps out there. BARC is one of them. I think just as a parent myself, there's no mystery to our kids' lives. Everything you want to know about your child is on their device. And as a parent, we've sort of handed this stuff over, and the kids think it's like they're right, and it's actually a privilege. And so I think, from a parenting standpoint, if I could just give a resource of getting the devices out of the bedroom at night. These kids are not getting enough sleep. They're up all night doing all sorts of, fun things, not so great things, inappropriate things, having a conflict with a friend, and then they're putting their pretty head down trying to, get those thoughts out of their brain. So I do think there are some tactical things you can do in your home to really mitigate some of the yuck that's coming into your student's life. And then just from an East Valley, Phoenix, Arizona resource standpoint, I know Teresa is going to speak at the church about local resources, including herself. But we do have Teen Lifeline, which is on the back of all student IDs. Those are students that have been trained in suicide prevention, that have clinicians standing next to them. That runs from 3 to 9 p.m. every day. And then overnight is taken over by Solari, which is one of our crisis providers. So we have a ton of resources. What we don't have, and I'm just going to be super honest, is we only have like 7 hospitals that service students that feel that they want to attempt or they have attempted. And so we are on a wait at night or during the day as well for beds for our tweens and teens. So that's why it's just so important to intervene as soon as you find out that there's something going on with your child. Our ERs, our adolescent psych units cannot keep up with the pace of this issue. And so the sooner, like Emma said, that you can have anchors in your child's life, I call it an emotional blueprint. Like in kindergarten, we teach them to stop, drop, and roll. What we haven't done a great job of is how to teach them how to stop, drop, and roll out of their emotional pain. So Emma talked about journaling and running and music and art therapy and like all sorts of different anchors that she has in her life besides people. I think that's what I'm seeing across the valley is like these kids are high achieving, engaged, they're in athletics, they're doing all this great stuff. But when it comes to coping and problem solving, they're having a hard time figuring out, when I feel like this, what do I do next? And so having kind of that conversation, like when you're stressed, when you're frustrated, when you're sad, what are those 3 or 4 things you can do? And I think Emma did a beautiful job during the movie of outlining some different ways to cope.
Yeah, and I think just to add with that too, I mean, one of the big things to focus on, think about a lot is that addressing the upstream factors. We really have to start addressing this much earlier, when our kids are in elementary school. And I know you focus on like social emotional learning and really just talking about mental health, because if you start doing it younger, when they become teenagers, they're going to be much more used to doing it then. So we're about out of time. There was a comment there as far as somebody had a young person who was receiving treatment and just won't open up to them, and it's really closed off, and can only imagine how difficult that is. But I think just keeping that faith, it sounds like you're getting them some real therapy, and just don't give up. It just keep being there and listening. But can only imagine how
mentorship, finding something that they're passionate about, like what makes their pulse race. Like, are they into photography? Are they into chess? Like, sometimes finding another person that's not you. I find that, sometimes my kids' friends will confide in me because I'm not their mom, and then we as moms can chat if I feel like I'm not breaking too much confidence, but they also know if it's a safety issue that I will be reaching out to parents. And I think that's one thing, that I have learned from Leanne Hall, who lost her son Andy, is sometimes as kids, if you know your friend is struggling, there's a difference between tattling on somebody and telling somebody about a safety issue. And it's so hard because you don't want to sell out the friendship. But Leanne teaches put the friend before the friendship. Sometimes you're going to have to tell somebody about your friend that's struggling to save a life. And that's really hard to do, easy for us to say. But I always, carry that with me, put the friend before the friendship.
Yes, definitely. That's definitely the case, because we do hear from young people who, a friend tells a friend that they're thinking about taking their lives, and the friend doesn't say anything. Then the young person actually takes their life, and then that friend is dealing with that guilt, forever. So I like that, put the friend before the friendship. So thanks everybody for joining. Just wanted to let you know a little bit, with the film. So we've with the whole COVID thing was a challenge getting it out. We really just, finished the film not too long ago. We've been doing some of these virtual screenings. Emma's been traveling some, showing the film. We're starting to roll it out, and we would just really love y'all's support. I dropped our social media, channels on there, because it can be used for good if it's this case, if you like us. Now we do tend to post some good content and, messages from Emma and whatnot. And, we're really just trying to expand this as much as possible, because we really wanted to make a good film, but really a film that got people to talk like we're doing tonight, and really, help communities enhance their suicide prevention efforts. So we really appreciate y'all being a part of this tonight. And Emma, any parting words for everyone?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say a big thank you for everyone for joining. It really means a lot to me to see so many people join an event like this and to sit and hear what we have to say. It means a lot to me. It just really gives me more hope and shows me that everything that we're doing and everything that I've tried to do is not going in vain, and that it actually is helping make the difference that we are all collectively trying to make. And another thing I'll leave you with is that silence will never keep you safe. That's something that I so wish I would have known or been told. I thought that I was doing what was best for me by handling my own problems and keeping it all to myself, when ultimately that was the worst thing that I could have done for myself. So silence will never keep you safe. If you're struggling with your mental health, if you're having a hard time, if you don't know how to cope, reach out for help. I promise you there are people out there who are willing and able to help you and give you the support that you need. And also know that you're not alone and that you're not crazy, because that's something I thought I was. I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only one, and I thought I was crazy, but you're not. You are totally normal, and this is normal, and you are normal, and you're not alone. There are so many other people out there who are going through exactly what you're going through. But there is hope. There is totally hope out there, and there are answers and resources for you, and suicide is never the answer, and it's never the option. So I encourage you all to continue advocating for mental health, continue advocating for yourself if you're struggling, and just to keep the hope alive and just keep pushing the message of hope. And yeah, that's it for me. I could go on and on at the end of this, but I'll close it at that.
Awesome.
I have a selfish message for the people at the church. If you thought this was as amazing as I do, first, I'm trying to get Emma to move to Arizona so she can go all over the state.
I would love to.
Second, if you thought this was a great movie and you are part of a school system, a charter network, a church, like a community, PTO, whatever, I think this film needs to be shown to our children. I have shown it to my own, I've shown it to a bunch of other kiddos, and I just think Emma is such a great ambassador. So spread the good word to your school and we'll get it done. So thanks so much for being here tonight.
And thanks so much to you, Katie, and to Teresa and the Compass Church, and to Bark for School. So really appreciate y'all championing this, and hopefully we'll see you again sometime.
Thanks so much. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.